supporters of Dave's Tackle Box.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Dave's Tackle Box. It is Sunday, the 20th of October, and I just had to take a quick glance at the calendar there because the year's nearly over. It's nearly Halloween. Blimey. Doesn't time fly, hey? I hope everybody's been having a good weekend. Tonight on Dave's Tackle Box, I'm going to be joined again by Dave Dawn, and we're going to be running through quite a few things that have hit the news to do with e-cigs in the last week. There's quite a lot going on. And well, Dave's going to do his usual job of helping me to catch up on it a bit. But we'll start with the titles as usual. Back in a minute. And hello, Dave. How you doing, mate?
Oh, not so bad, bunny lad. Yourself?
I'm good. For some reason we seem to have some control panel thing going on. There we go. It's gone.
Has it? Oh, that's always good.
Welcome to Dave's Tackle Box again.
Yes.
If they could see the things we see while those titles are playing, eh?
Oh, what? Good
One
Lord.
of these days I'm going to record us singing along with that title music.
You should. I'm sure it would go to number one.
Oh, yes. That could go
In
viral
Latvia.
on YouTube. That could.
Oh, without a doubt.
It's pretty tuneful, really.
Well, close.
In a sense, anyway. Anyway, so there's been lots going on at the moment. There's lots going on, period, at the moment, isn't there? Just like there's stories and twists and subtexts and all sorts going on. So what I've done this week is I pulled out a few subjects for us to look at, some of which were in the billing for this show, and a couple of others that we may or may not get time to get to. But I think it's a bit of a political show again, guys, because I think it really matters at the moment. I really do. And one of the first stories I've picked out, it kind of links in with what Dave and I were talking about last week. And if you missed last week's show, what we were talking about was what happens next. Okay, so we won this plenary vote on the 8th of October, and now we've got this process of trilogue, where basically the EU Health Commission representatives are talking to the EU Council, aka the independent, the individual member state health ministers, to do their little deals and basically get something through that they can pass as law. And we spoke at length last week about how that might go. Clive Bates has done a wonderful blog, I think, since we did the show last week, didn't he, Dave?
Yeah.
Which I would definitely recommend having a look at. clivebates.com, I think it's his latest blog. But he's basically looking at all the different scenarios, where we're at, suggesting a couple of different ways it could go, really sort of emphasising the point that we were making, that now is the time to get in your MP's face. But as we were discussing things, we touched upon very briefly that the whole legal basis of individual member states trying to classify e-cigs under medical regulations, and we touched on that subject. Now, we know that there's been a number of cases around the EU already. This is prior to the EU Parliament vote on the 8th of October, and obviously in advance of anything that's now negotiated between governments and the EU Health Commission. And we've seen a number of cases go into court only to be kicked out. I know now, given that Sweden have just had their equivalent to the MHRA overturned, I think that makes 8 member states that have had an attempt to classify as medical devices turned over. Is that right, Dave?
It's 8 court cases in the EU.
A couple of those were in Germany, I think, weren't they?
I think there were 6. There were 3 originally in Germany, and they were appealed by the losers, government in other words, and when they went to the Court of Appeal, that's another 3 because they got kicked out again and the government got told no, you can't.
Right.
Just isn't. There's one in, I think it was Hungary. You know, my brain's not working.
It's really hard to keep track of this stuff. And to be honest with you, trying to find information, even using Google, is the stream still going out okay?
Mine's just dropped and come back up again.
Mine just keeps dropping. Yeah,
it's coming back up again now. I don't know whether it's the receiving end or whether it's the giving end, but it's not buffering for long, that's for sure.
No. It seems to be, I'm getting some comments that it's up and down like a yo-yo.
Oh dear.
It seems to be going out okay at this end.
If you're not getting any buffering, if there's nothing on your indicator at the top...
No, it's clean as a whistle.
Then it has to be at the ISP end. I shall check.
It's looking that way. Apologies to those watching live, and actually, even bigger apologies to those of you watching the recording, because you don't really care about any of this.
This also is true.
You can suffer like the rest of us. We are having some issues there, and they are kind of beyond our control.
The bandwidth, I'm just checking bandwidth here, and that all appears to be okay. I'm just seeing what's going on. Yeah, it's on and off again, but it's got to be server based.
Okay, well, let's press on, because it's broadcasting okay from this end and it's recording.
Yes,
so,
and it seems to be fine on iOS 7. So
yeah, and some people are reporting no problem, so it's got to be an interweb thing.
Yep.
And apologies to those who are getting a bit disrupted. Yes, is your ISP owned by the MHRA? Asks Whip It Up.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yes, I do apologise. Okay, so we're talking there about there being a number of court cases that have basically gone in favour of, or should I say, have gone against regulating these things as medicines.
Absolutely right.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flick over to a web page that I have here, and it's the one entitled Google Translate on my thing, because it is a Swedish article.
Is it in Swedish?
It's from Sweden.
It's from Sweden.
And Kanoodlestoodle. And this is a Google Translate job. I did look to see if I could find any English text reporting this. But as is typical with Google Translate, it's not something you want to read out word for word. But you get the gist. And basically this is telling the story of the MPA, which is the Swedish equivalent to the MHRA. And they basically slapped an order on a company in Malmo called the Trade Team, who are an e-cig vendor. And gave them a penalty payment of 700,000 Swedish krona. That was back in the spring, and this company anyway sort of fought them all the way through the courts, and eventually the Swedish High Court has now ruled that the MPA is acting illegally and cannot classify these things. So this one's particularly interesting. compared to, you know, as I say, it's not the first case like this that we've seen. I'll just bring Dave back in here. But what makes this particularly interesting is Sweden has always been complicated, hasn't it, because of snus.
Yes.
And they have actually had a ban on e-cigs in place. Or so we've been told. You know, they haven't been freely available.
The ban was in place for a fairly short order of time because they took it to court as soon as it was enacted. Yeah,
absolutely. But I seem to remember that when we started looking at this stuff, you know, getting on for a year ago now, when the whole EU thing raised its ugly head, that they were saying that snus, you know, but basically that's banned across Europe, but Sweden had an exemption.
Yes.
That goes back to the last tobacco product directive. But e-cigs were being regulated, weren't they, initially? So I don't know whether they were then, that got sort of, people got brave and this is the first challenge to it. But I was always under the impression that they weren't actually available in Sweden.
That was Denmark.
That was Denmark, was it?
That was Denmark, where there are meds there.
Right, okay.
And they are the only European member state that has med regs already in place for e-cigs that I'm aware of. In Lithuania, the current presidency, they're banned outright.
Yes, so I gather, yes.
They're not allowed. So Sweden's now had a case. I think Denmark needs to have a case, and I think Lithuania needs to have a case. And
do you know what? It would be quite nice to see a case in the UK as well.
I'm not entirely certain when they can do it, to be honest, Dave. I know that they've got a window of, I think it's either 3 or 6 months to seek injunctive relief, but there's got to be a substantive announcement, and so far there's only an announcement of intention rather than substantive, which makes the whole thing almost impossible to work out, frankly.
Well, let's be honest, the UK, and when I say UK, I mean MHRA, because up to now, quite clearly, they have been the policy. Anything the MHRA have come up with, government have just gone, yeah, all right then. Yeah, and so they were quite clearly waiting on the EU.
Oh, their announcement is contingent upon the EU ratifying their illegal move to call e-cigs meds. The only way that they can actually impose medicinal regulation is if the EU says they can, and even then it's challengeable in court. The jury committee was quite explicit about all of this, that the judgment of the European Court of Justice was invoked in all 3 cases, or all 6 cases really, in Germany, and the judgment that was delivered was based on what the European Court of Justice said. What that means effectively is that any attempt to regulate e-cigs as medicines within the EU will be against precedent law within the EU. Fact. And that's just been shown again in Sweden.
Yeah, and you know, it's you're wary, aren't you, of getting too sort of confident. But it does seem that regardless of there's 2 ways you can look at this, isn't there? If this trilogue process goes out and negotiates something that does classify them as medical devices, then all changes, I guess, because then the precedent changes.
Well, no, because governments, whether they be a European government or a member state government or a national government like in the States, they have their own, the laws that they've got to abide by. And because the precedent is within EU, because of the way the medicines rules are drawn up, had the MHRA been able to classify these things as medicines, they'd have done it in 2010.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line on it. They couldn't. And in that letter that they sent out to Totally Wicked, they said as much. That under their current rules and regulations and guidelines and the way that they work, they could not would not, could not classify e-cigs as medicines. They are reliant upon the EU making that judgment. If the
Yeah.
EU makes that judgment, then it's the whole of Europe that gets taken to court in the European Court of Justice, and whatever the European Court of Justice decides, that then applies to all of the member states.
Yeah. Now, but if we've gone into this trilogue negotiation period. If what comes out of that is a proposal to classify them as medregs, then basically there is a European mandate, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah. So it could change it. Now, there's a good chance that anybody that took that to the European Court of Justice could demonstrate that was quite clearly what the Parliament voted against.
Absolutely,
because
yes.
of Amendment 170. So,
Yes.
I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion, but it's still quite a sort of... it's a bit rocky, the path, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the path is paved with tripwires left, right and centre. We've got the likes of Martin McKee, ably backed up now by Stanton Glantz. The pair of them are having a love affair on Twitter.
If ever two people were made for each other.
I know where I'd like to see them kissing, but never mind. You've got the likes of Martin McKee now, who is openly gloating when he goads people into making medicinal claims. It's
Yes.
the quick word again.
Yeah.
And he has openly admitted that he is collating evidence of that kind, such that when push comes to shove and all the rest of it, he's going to be able to present that. He's another one like Stanton Glantz. As you say, they are ideal for each other. It's a marriage made in heaven for the pair of them. They just need Simon Chapman to come up, and you're talking three in a bed of the very worst kind.
I could see a few reasons to get them all in the same room anyway.
Well, yes, I could think of a good one as well. But, let's not go there, shall we not?
So, I mean, I think, just to kind of draw a line under that subject, I think what we can do for our part in this. I mean, this is essentially there's no downside to what happened in Sweden last week.
No.
It's great news, okay? Because until that, as it said in that article there with the really dodgy translation, the MPA, the Swedish MHRA, if they decide to appeal this, then it could change. But until that happens, e-cigs are generally available. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. Actually, there's a little devil inside me that wishes that the MPA would appeal it, because if they did and got knocked back again, that's yet another dirty great big nail hammered in with a sledgehammer into the coffin of medregs. Member states have got to see by now that this is just a non-starter for
You would
them.
think so, but the noises we're getting from the MHRA don't seem to suggest that they are getting that point.
They have this wonderful phrase that we still favour medicinal regulation for electronic cigarettes because we think they'll be safer, they'll be more effective, and all of this, it's just pants, it's rubbish. The bottom line on it is, and exactly the same applies to NRT, and exactly the same applies to smoked lit tobacco. All of them are lifestyle choices. That's the bottom line. There's nothing medicinal at all about any of them. None.
As evidenced by the fact that nobody's trying to actually medicinalise tobacco.
Well, there's that, and nobody's trying to medicinalise Diet Coke or low-fat spreads or exercise or lettuce.
Most of those things should be outlawed, in my opinion.
I'll certainly go along with the exercise.
I mean,
and lettuce,
because you
yes.
do sometimes. You order Coke and you get Diet.
Well, I always drink Diet. I only drink Diet.
Ooh, no.
Sometimes I get the full fat stuff, and I just find it too sweet.
Ooh.
But that's my choice, though. You see.
Yes.
And it's a lifestyle choice.
And I defend your choice, even if it's wrong.
No, it is. I mean, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle choice, isn't it?
Look, I could easily go off on one here. The whole damn thing is a personal, individual lifestyle choice.
Well, this is
and just like menthol bloody cigarettes, to be honest.
Oh God,
with you.
no. I wouldn't. But if other people want to, that's exactly their choice. It's
Exactly
entirely up
the
to them.
point. Exactly the point. And I think because we won our victory on the 8th, you know, I certainly did for the first day or something, until somebody pointed out, lost sight of the fact that actually, you know, this, you know, taking away menthol cigarettes, it's just wrong. It is an individual lifestyle choice.
Absolutely. I firmly believe that if everybody is properly educated, if they know what the risks are, then they choose to either take those risks or not.
Yeah.
And if you decide that you don't want to take a particular risk, then it's up to you. I keep on using the example of jumping out of an aeroplane. Now, I do know one man did it over the Alps without a parachute and survived. And I've seen that bloke with the flying suit on, jumping off the top of mountains and whizzing 3 feet above the tops of church spires and stuff like that as he hurtles towards a lake. Yeah, grand. It's lovely. Obviously, it's perfectly safe when he's doing it because he hasn't killed himself yet. But there's no way I'm going to do that. I know what the risks are, and I'm not prepared to take them. But I'm not going to stop him from doing it, and I don't see why anybody should legislate to stop him from doing it. One of the great joys of an individual's life is the ability to be an idiot. And if you want to be an idiot, it's entirely up to you. Now, there are those who opine that anybody that smokes lit tobacco and cigarettes is an idiot. Well, that's your opinion. But do remember, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one, and most of them stink.
And also, most of us were idiots for many, many, many years on that reckoning.
Well, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the bottom line on it is, it's our choice to do what we want to do. Hence, what I've been trying to get everybody to band on with is nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
It's our lives. You know, when you start talking about stakeholders in e-cigs or stakeholders in NCPs or whatever you want to call it, the most important stakeholder is not the one that's raking all the money out. It's the one whose life is at stake. That's the biggest stake you can have in anything. We are, as vapers, the biggest stakeholders in e-cigs and the legislation of them. Therefore, when it comes down to legislation, I say we should all say nothing about us without us. You want to legislate, then you've got to come and communicate and talk to us, because we are the biggest stakeholders. We are the important ones. That's not just you and me, Dave. That's every vapor everywhere in the world. Nothing about us without us.
Completely agree. And by us, that means, like you say, legitimate stakeholders, people who want to continue to use these things that we're using. And the reason I make the distinction between that and the general public, we've got some examples of at the end of the show. Because there's an awful lot of misunderstanding out there, but we'll get to that. Dave, we've come up to, it's time to take our first break. I think probably what I'll do, because of the little internet foul up, is I'll let us run over by a couple of minutes at the end if we need to.
Okay.
But for now, we'll take our first break. So we'll be back in about a minute and a half.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.
And welcome back. Okay, right, so we put the legal situation to rights there, didn't we, mate?
Yeah, that's what we do. Put the world to rights. That's our job.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what we do these days on a Sunday, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you're starting to sound like a grumpy old man, same as
I've
me.
been a grumpy old man for the last 20 years, mate.
Well, you're not that old. You're just a boy.
Well, I know. I don't feel like that. Anyway, there was another story. Anyway, I'm going to flick up another web page.
Okay.
He says, changing the subject.
I just had visions of you saying I feel like a boy.
Hang on then. All right, I'll play up to it.
No, it's all right. There you go. Are you going to point with that?
Only if it's warranted.
That's good.
Right. Let's just flick this up on the screen. Okay. Right. This is a story which I found on a site. I say I found, actually. I followed a link to it. It came from a couple of different sources to me, this link. It's a site called Vape Ranks, and it's just a little editorial piece that they've done. They do claim a couple of different things as sources here. AT News, La Repubblica, and Corriere della Sera, which sounds kind of Spanish to me.
No, it's Italian.
Yeah, it's close enough. And there's well, it is about Italy, I suppose. So there
was a clue in the question, Dave.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. The headline is Italy's crumbling e-cigarette industry, or how excessive taxation can ruin a booming business. And again, I won't read all this out, but the gist of this is that basically the Italian government are basically taxing electronic cigarettes in line with tobacco taxes, which means that they're paying if you're a vapor in Italy, and you're not importing stuff from China or elsewhere in the EU, I guess, you're paying 58.5% tax.
Oh, God.
Whether that includes their VAT equivalent or not, I really don't know. The article isn't that specific. But even if it does, that's it's nearest damn it's 60% tax, and they're reporting here that that they have a National Association for Electronic Smoking, ANAFE, which I must admit I'm not familiar with, but it looks like some kind of Italian trade organisation, and they're reporting a 99% drop in requests for new business licences in the sector, and 123 closed shops in the months of May and June. So the story there is that in Italy the vaping industry is being absolutely decimated, and of course it is if they're paying 58.5%, especially when they can just nip over the border and buy fags for about £4 a packet. It's just absolutely insane. Now, it's often been I can remember from the moment I started vaping, and the MHRA were first sniffing around in 2010, a lot of people thought the pretext there was to tax it, and I kind of saw that as a bit of a conspiracy theory, and I've not heard any sort of official idea in the UK that the intention is to tax e-cigs or e-liquid in line with tobacco. But the Italians clearly think it's the right thing to do.
Well, it was the Italians, one of the Italian MEPs, that posed the question to the EU Parliament what was going to be done about the loss of revenue, because e-cigs in Italy are very, very popular.
Indeed. With 60% tax on their tobacco.
Well,
I'm not
yes.
shocked.
Well, ours is higher, 85% in the
That's
UK.
true. That's true, actually, yes.
But yeah, the Italians were going for it big style, and this MEP reported a loss of 132 million euros in the first quarter of 2013.
Yeah.
Which is a fair old chunk of cash.
Well, there's some figures in here as well, Dave. It's saying that the income from tobacco taxes, this is in an 8-month period, has dropped by 6.1%. That's 455 million euros in 8 months. Their tobacco tax has dropped by.
It does kind of tell you something, doesn't it?
Well, it does, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It's like perhaps that maybe E-cigs are not a gateway to smoking, but smoking may be a gateway to e-cigs.
or that e-cigs are a gateway out of smoking.
Well, indeed.
To the tune of 400 and however many million in tax in Italy.
Exactly.
Now, my argument on that would be, because I really like using their own figures against them, if the cost to government in Europe of smoking-related diseases is in the order of 152 billion, with a B, billion, euros per annum, then Italy's share of that must be a fair old chunk. Let's call it 2 billion.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Call it, go on, we'll call it 5 billion. It makes the sums easier. So they've lost, we'll call it 500 million euros in tax, but 6% of their people are not smoking cigarettes anymore. So they're not going to be subject to smoking-related diseases. So if they just bide their time for a little while, they're going to be better off, according to the EU, according to the Commission. That was what the Commission said.
Indeed.
152 billion, and we've got to stop spending this money on smoking-related diseases somehow. Well, there you go. The answer's there. But it would appear that national governments don't have the intestinal fortitude to be able to ride out that little hiccup in the middle until everybody's moved across to e-cigs. It's all about the bloody money. That's the problem with the whole thing.
Just give you a sort of tangible example that's mentioned in here, Avali. Now, I've got a few Avali products around. To quote from this piece, it says, Avali, one of the world's largest e-cigarette makers and distributors in the world, so not fantastic English there, has announced a 50% drop in sales for 2013 compared to the same period of last year. 50%. Yes. And they expect things to get even worse, with an estimated sales deficit of 80% in January 2014.
Good Lord. That's it just doesn't even bear thinking about, does it?
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
You've got a situation here where, on the one hand, you've got a public health dividend that's enormous. And the fact of the matter is, as John Britton would put it, as he did put it, but let's expand these figures a little bit, he was talking about all 10 million smokers in the UK going to e-cigs, and that would save 5 million lives, or it would prevent 5 million lives from being terminated early. And it would therefore reduce the burden, the financial burden on the NHS. Exactly the same applies throughout the whole of Europe. If you get everybody in Europe on e-cigs, there's 152 billion loss they're talking about. That's a hell of a lot of money. That would bail America out of its debt, almost.
Yes, it would certainly make a dent. It's just...
that's per annum.
Yeah, I'm just looking in chat there. Jeff Benyon's asking whether the drop-off in sales might be down to the products they're selling. That's not to totally quote him. But I would say no. I mean, Avali, this is an Avali product. It's an e-cigs. You know, this is the kind of thing they're selling.
Yes.
And you know, they're pretty much selling the same stuff as other e-cig vendors and outlets that are just booming in the UK at the moment.
They're effectively Joytech.
They pretty much are, aren't they? They're a reseller.
Well, they're part of. I mean, the partner with Joytech. They do some of the design. In fact, the same way that the Janty used to with them. So they're that level of partner with them. So yes, you've got the Avali version of the e-cigs out there. It's not bad kit.
It's in my hand.
Mine's dead.
Mine's still going. Mine's still going.
Mine's died.
Yeah, and you know, it's you know, we need to keep an eye on this kind of thing, I guess. I'm still not convinced that the UK government will look to tax above VAT levels. I'm not convinced. I don't think they've got the sphericals to do it.
I think you're right, and given that our Linda, your friend and mine, was banging on about medregs that would make it cheaper because the VAT rate would be dropped, it was only VAT she was talking about. Had there been any hint of tax, had there been any intention of raising a tax, were there not to be made, and that must have been considered. She's tried every tactic in the book. She's tried every argument in the book. And if that was going to be an argument, you can bet your bottom dollar our Linda would have said so.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Absolutely certain.
Yeah, so that's just something to be wary of there. I mean, I think it reads to me like a case of Italy doing its own thing. I don't see that being catching on too much, applying a 60% tax on e-cigs.
I think Italy was very, very worried about going the same road as Greece and Ireland, to be honest.
Yeah, possibly.
I think that's been the bottom line there. They're just so worried about falling into a deficit that they can't dig themselves out of, that they've just panicked. And all they really needed to have done was look at the UK, we have the biggest deficit in Europe.
Yeah,
on physical one or per capita basis, it makes no difference. We've got the biggest deficit, and we're servicing it.
Yeah.
So they've got no need to worry. I think it's just a panic. And didn't they want to pay for prison guards or something out of it? Yeah, it was prison guards they wanted to pay for.
That's lovely. I don't really know what to say out of that. Yeah.
Hey, you know what I'm going to tell you? We just gone and busted the whole of the mafia. We got to put them somewhere. So we're going to tax your e-cigs to keep you safe from being shot on the streets. Luigi. Either that or it's Berlusconi's parties. I don't know which.
Yeah, that's a subject in its own right, that one.
Yeah. Let's not go there. He's fond of suits, is that fella?
Right. It's an interesting observation there by Sam Munro in chat as well. He's saying, as smokers, most of us weren't political. Through vaping, now many of us are. And I've commented myself, I was clearly very politically naive until all this kicked off. I'll probably lose interest in politics once we've got this beat as well, to be honest with you.
Oh, I've got the bit between my teeth now. It's my second run around a piece of legislation, is this. I was involved in the CB thing back in 1980. And this is quite different. In those days, it was kind of done on a gentlemanly basis in meetings in smoky rooms where the government officials with whom you were talking handed the fags around and bought you a glass of whiskey. We were just proles. But in the information age, it hasn't half changed. And I think for the better, when you look at the amount of power that the people have, us proles, us plebs, who are now able to make our voices heard loud and long all over the world because of the communication devices that we've got now. I mean, something like what we're doing tonight could not have happened back in 1980.
That's true, and and things like Twitter and what have you, we commented, didn't we, last week, that it was unprecedented. But I get the feeling that this isn't the last consumer issue that will be decided by Twitter.
I think there are a few more coming up, and this one's not finished yet. And I'm convinced we have the power. As vapers, there are plenty of us. And there are plenty of us with big enough mouths that aren't afraid to use them. And I'm thrilled every time I see it happening. And I'm even more thrilled when I see the effect that we had on the 8th of October and the effect I think we're quite likely to have if we talk to our MPs long enough and loud enough and tweet them all publicly. Yeah. Let the world know that you've been. Let the world know what your MP said, because your MP will be somebody else's as well, who you might not know, but they may just be following you on Twitter, and I'll be retweeting you left, right and centre, and so will everybody else. And it'd just be interesting to see how much pressure we can bring to bear on the UK government with this fourth option. The whole notion of having e-cigs in a regulatory category of their own, a nicotine regulatory body such as the Royal College of Physicians suggested in 2005, 2006 and 2007, which Cancer Research UK supported. That was taking NRT out of medicinal regulation and having them regulated by this specifically custom built and custom written regulatory authority for all nicotine products.
Yeah.
And Ash supported that. There was a will, there was a political will, and there was a lobbying will for that to happen. We need that to reawaken, I think.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Now you mentioned there about, basically creating a new category for these new products. We're going to look at that from a slightly different aspect and how they should be treated for advertising after the break. Just before I go to the break, though, I promised a colleague of mine on UK Vapors, a fellow moderator on the UK Vapors Forum, that I'd give a plug. He wants me to mention that the UK Vapors Forum are doing their 2013 awards. It's where you can nominate all kinds of things like best mod, that kind of stuff. That's like e-cig mod, not moderator, obviously. So this has come from Cooper, and what he's done is he's set up a forum on UK Vapors, and at the moment they're assembling a list of categories which in December you'll be able to vote for. So if you want a category for a UK Vapors award for 2013, go over to UK Vapors and tell them what category you'd like to see. There's quite a list there already, actually. So I can think of a few that would relate to various politicians, actually.
You're not allowed to use that word.
Oh.
And I don't mean politician either.
Let's take a break.
I've just said Jeremy Hunt and say Raymond Slam.
There's a few like that, actually. I'll tell you during the break.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.
iVapour and iVapour Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's iVapour.co.uk and iVapour-elixir.co.uk. iVapour and iVapour-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of VapourTrails.tv.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.
And welcome back, everybody. And you, Dave. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you very much,
Although
Dave.
you never really went away because we were just chatting, weren't we?
We were just sitting talking, yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, actually, we were paying attention to our vendor messages, weren't we?
We were, yes, and not talking over them at all, not even slightly. Not even
do that.
Not even remotely. No.
Right. I'm going to pop yet another web page up now. We on the subject of new categories for e-cigs, and this is a theme that kind of runs through a lot of stuff, doesn't it? They're new, okay? They're not tobacco, they're not medicine, they're a third sort of option. They could be classed as sort of general products when it comes to regulation and stuff, but they're not quite there, are they? They are a new category, and we, as Dave said, we do need to start looking now and thinking what regulation should look like for these things. But just looking at it from another angle, this is an article that popped up in the Marketing Week, which sounds like some kind of trade journal to me.
It is.
And I picked this one up. I think it was Glugler on UK Vapors posted the link up the other day. And the story here is that the headline is advertising rules for e-cigarettes to be rewritten. And the piece is about, it makes reference to the rulings that were made on the e-lights ad and the e-cig ad, which were basically banned, told they couldn't be shown on TV recently. And this is I didn't know this organisation existed, the Committees of Advertising Practice. So that's the CAP and the BCAP. And it describes them here as the sister body of the Advertising Standards Authority. And they're the people who told e-lights and e-cig that you can't keep running that ad.
That's right.
Now, so what they're saying here is that the CAP admits that the current advertising rules were not designed to regulate the relatively new product, and some e-cigarette ads have been caught by code intended to restrict the advertising of tobacco. Mm-hmm. So I read that paragraph and I take that paragraph quite positively. It's because, they're saying they're being restricted by something and perhaps they shouldn't be restricted.
I think that's exactly what it says, Dave.
I think it does. It gets, a little bit more sort of vague as it goes down. It makes reference to earlier this month, the European Parliament put new limits on the advertising of electronic cigarettes. Which isn't quite such a positive spin. We know that means you can't advertise them as a medical product. You can't say that they're going to cure you of anything, or you can't use them to quit. They're not an NRT.
What Amendment 170 also said was they can't be advertised in the same way that tobacco cigarettes can't be advertised, but that isn't written into law yet.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But basically, it's suggesting that there will be a public consultation. To quote directly, it's this paragraph here, I'll highlight it with my mouse. It says, the body is now exploring potential options with a view to launching a full public consultation, so it's not totally committal, on the advertising of e-cigarettes as early as possible, quote, in 2014. So I don't know what a public consultation on advertising actually looks like. I can't recall ever having seen anything like that before, have you?
It looks much like MLX 364.
Does it now?
All of these, yes, but not in the same way. I don't suppose. The one thing I do know is
just explain what MLX 364 was.
MLX 364 was the MHRA's, in inverted commas, consultation on e-cigs. This was where they stated what their three possible outcomes were.
And I'll just interrupt there and just say he uses the term consultation very, very generally.
Well, yes, it was intended to be a point where, as a public consultation, everybody got their say. That's you and me and everybody else is a vapor that was around at the time, and there was a lot fewer of us then than there is now, plus all of the industry, plus all of the health experts, plus the NHS and anybody else basically that wanted to steam in. The idea is that you have a view, and that they're supposed to take everybody's view into account. They're not actually supposed to weight it, although they do weight it slightly. Because if it's Cancer Research UK that has a view, for instance, that's supposed to be a representative body. But ESITA would have a similar kind of weighting because that's a representative body. But we as individuals are individuals, and the more, the merrier. So if they get 1.2 million vapors coming in and saying, there's nothing wrong with advertising e-cigs anywhere you like, just tell us they're e-cigs, tell us what they cost, tell us where we can get them, tell us what they do, that's it. Usual caveats on telling porky pies, of course. So, a carto that's that big can't be 30 fags, obviously. But as long as they're truthful, let them go. And if 1.2 million of us get involved and tell them that carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, because I think that's very well put, actually, Dave.
Well, ultimately, we're the ones that are going to be advertised to.
Well, indeed. And I don't know about you, but I can take most of what advertising throws at me because I have this filter.
Yes.
It's
called fast forward on Sky Plus.
And I'm not the kind just to buy something just because I've seen an ad.
Really?
I'm just going to pick up on there was a question there in chat. It was to both of us, to DD and DK. The question comes from Media Youth. He says, why should they be handled differently than Red Bull, for instance? Now, apologies if I got this wrong. If you're talking about why regulation should be different as opposed to why advertising rules should be different, I can tell you that I think Red Bull is different to what we're doing. Red Bull is heavily regulated. It's a food product. And the way those things are regulated on the production line is incredible, you know. I mean, it's not quite as bad as Medregs, but it ain't far off, to be honest with you. And then, you know, regulation for e-cigs has to include, I think, it's not just the e-liquid. I mean, we don't want chargers that are going to catch fire if you leave them plugged into the wall overnight, do we? We've got trading standards regulations for that. But you know, I'm not saying that what we've got isn't totally adequate, and I don't think it needs to change significantly from that, but I do see a distinction between that and something like Red Bull. I don't know about yourself, Dave.
Well, from my point of view, Red Bull is heavy on caffeine and taurine, and I do know people that are heavily addicted to Red Bull. They drink an awful lot of it. I know people in general that are addicted in general to energy drinks, and I'm not mentioning any names. But you know one. Two.
I know several people. They're doing the job that I do. A lot of people. It's been dubbed Project Fuel.
Yes, it is.
And I know people who can get through 15, 20 cans of that stuff a day.
Well, when I was in IT years ago, and if you were out on a project doing a big installation, you used to take 3 or 4 slabs of Red Bull with you and chuck them in the fridge or wherever you were at.
It's replaced coffee.
It did, because you'd get it down your neck a damn sight quicker than a double espresso.
Absolutely right.
And you kind of needed it. Whether that's...
I'm not passing judgment, incidentally, just in case anybody thinks, because, you know, I class caffeine and nicotine exactly the same, personally, in terms of what my view on that is. There was a story during last week, and I can't remember where I got it from. I think I saw it on the BBC. Some guy... you can get caffeine in tablets now.
Yeah, you can.
It's like solid sort of energy drink, and they're selling them to compete with energy drinks, apparently. And some guy in the Midlands, actually, it might have been in the local news that I saw it, the local news section on the BBC, and he'd popped a whole packet of these things and had a heart attack.
Yes.
He's in his 30s, you know, so... It
made nationals. We used to get Pro Plus when I was a kid. Shows how old you are that you can't remember them.
I remember Pro Plus, absolutely.
Yeah, Pro Plus was pure caffeine.
Yeah.
And it came in a small file, and there was
two tablets. The one I remember.
Yeah, it was two. It was tablets, but it was in a small file, and there was 2 tablets less than you needed to have a heart attack.
Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. That was for an adult. And thank God I was 6'2" when I was 11. So, because we used to pop them something crazy going into exams.
Yes, well, that's where the market was, students. So for a long time with Pro Plus, wasn't it? So I guess these energy drinks are a modern take on that, I guess.
Well, they are. I mean, my daughter, when she was undergoing her finals, the tutors at Glasgow Uni advised her to get some Pro Plus and some good coffee down her neck before she went in. And apparently it helps concentration and everything else. So there you go. Oh, look, Midge Dogs just said he used Pro Plus at uni to do late night essay marathons.
It's nothing did, new. I think.
Yeah, it's nothing new.
And I'm sure they still do. Yeah.
Nothing new.
And driving down to the south of France.
And all kinds of... Yeah. You wouldn't advise that necessarily, but it always used to be a stop every so often for a strong black coffee. Especially in Italy, because the coffee in Italy is really good.
I'm going to quickly change the subject here, because there's one more thing I want to touch on. And having watched the Villa Spurs game earlier, I'm glad I didn't go. I'm not totally sort of overjoyed about the subject of football at the moment. But there's another story that has made the news. I think it was today, and now I can't find it. Yes, I found it. Sunday the 20th of October. So I'm just going to flick this one up onto the screen. This is a story in the Scotsman. And the headline is Celtic and Rangers are urged to cut ties with e-cigarettes. And the story here is basically that e-lights have done a sponsorship deal with Celtic and Rangers. And they're not the only football clubs. I know of at least one local to me. Derby County have done the same. And it says medical leaders have urged Celtic and Rangers football clubs to reconsider their links with an electronic cigarettes company amid concerns that it will damage efforts to reduce smoking. The brand in question is e-lights, and the medical leaders turn out to be a letter from the BMA, Dr. Andrew Thompson, who is a GP in Angus. And he says that sport's a healthy activity and clubs such as Celtic and Rangers, quote, should be leading by example to encourage healthy living rather than advertising a smoking product which contains the addictive substance nicotine.
Has he missed the point much?
Well, I'm going to throw this one straight to you, Dave, because I just know you've got a comment on that.
Oh, God.
If Dr. Andrew Thompson, the Angus GP, were in the room with you now, what would you like to say to him about that?
I would like to tell him that if he's wanting to promote healthier options, banning e-cigs from football grounds isn't the way to go about it, sunshine. Start with deep-fried Mars bars. You know, like let's talk about deep-fried Mars bars, and then deep-fried pizza in batter. You know.
I have to say, I was in Derby yesterday in the shopping centre, and they have one of these food court things in the shopping mall. It's a Westfield centre, just like everywhere else, yeah. And they've got a food court thing, like it's got a Burger King and a Subway and like noodle bars and all the usual sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
But they've got one that's a chip shop, and they were offering free samples, so I just grabbed a handful of chips, as you do, on the way down the escalator. And I pointed to this other thing that this girl had on the tray. She stood there like a numpty at the top of the escalator. I hope she's not watching.
You're in deep trouble if she is.
And there were these like battered things on a plate there, and I noticed that nobody'd taken any. So the chips were running out fast because people were getting as many on the fork that they gave you as they could, shoving them in their gobs and then going down the escalator. And there were some little fish bite things, and then there was this other thing, and nobody taken any. I said, "What is that?" She said, "That's battered Mars bar."
Aye.
And I just said, "No thanks." So there you go.
The flavour of them, and yes, I have, of course. You have to. You've got to try them once in your life.
I did in Glasgow.
Yes, the flavour is gorgeous. The problem is, if they've been cooked for just that 30 seconds too long, the toffee scalds your gob, something chronic.
It's true.
But, I mean, yeah.
It's also a heart attack on a plate, isn't it?
Well, so is a full English breakfast.
Yeah, but I'm going to defend that.
The fact of... But it comes down to what we were saying before. If you know the risks and you're prepared to take them, fine. It's entirely up to you. But the BMA... what the BMA is bothered about is this renormalisation malarkey. And I'm really pleased whenever I hear Martin Dockrell of Ash get on his hind legs and come out with his lovely Scottish brogue. You're not renormalising smoking. You're renormalising vaping. It's safer. It's better for you. That's what you want.
Sounded just like him too.
I did my best.
Unusually for one of these pieces, and I think we've given that all the exposure it needs, really, haven't we? That piece. I've got a slightly happier football vaping story, and this involves Wolverhampton Wanderers, another club that's fairly local to me. And the headline on this one, this is from the Express and Star, which is probably the biggest selling local rag. Newspaper, and the headline on this one is Wolves fans can smoke, in inverted commas, e-cigarettes at Molyneux. And they've done a sponsorship deal with e-cigs, and what they've said is that people can use the electronic cigarettes inside the stands. So if those of you are not familiar with football grounds and the way they work, you typically, at half-time, and I'm trying to find the pointer on my mouse here, there it is, too many screens, at half-time, or before and after the game, you go inside the stand, and that's where they sell you pies and booze and stuff like that, and they're saying you can use an e-cig there. And e-cig, I guess, are flogging them, handing out samples and stuff around there. And the club, and I think this is one of the possibly the first one that I've heard that's actually sort of come out and said, and yes, you can use them in the ground rather than just like turning a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
The club that I'm a season ticket holder, Aston Villa, they've got no policy currently. And I've heard of people being told to stop, and I've heard of people being told, yeah, it's fine. They'll get a policy soon, I'm sure. And I think that's probably where most clubs lie at the moment. But it's nice to see that the club is supporting them. But I can't really show it without showing some of the comments below, because if anybody knows, if you want to get a row going on the internet, just mention a football club basically. And some of the stuff in here is it's a massive error in judgment. And most of the people, and they will be locals, with it being a local paper, most of them will be Wolves fans, with the odd West Bromwich fan just stirring up trouble, no doubt. They seem to think that the club are doing it to make money somehow. So whatnextwonga.com on the shirts I can see as a comment. And the standout comment for me, if I can find it again, was from a guy called LA Wanderer. And his reply to this piece was, well, we're used to having a lot of hot air and smoke around the place. The amount of smoke to come out of Moxie's backside over the years should have carried a government health warning. Moxie being their chief exec. So, so I'm thinking now that we probably, Dave, should give LA Wanderer the last word on that.
That makes absolute sense to me, because I've got no idea who Moxie is, but it sounds as though he's right.
He's either the chairman or the chief exec of the club, basically. So he's not a popular figure in Wolverhampton over the last, since he got there, pretty much. So if you listen to local radio around here, you'd be familiar with the guy's name.
Right.
And yes. But I think, there's a couple more things here that we can touch on maybe next week. But I think for now, that brings us to the end of this particular show. We've overrun slightly, but we lost a bit of time to the interwebs, didn't we?
We did indeed.
So hopefully Kat won't shout at me too badly.
She won't. I'll mollify her. And I know what would mollify her.
Oh,
greatly.
you're so dead.
Oh, no, I'm not. No, she knows what mollifies means. If you mention the knees meet on the 9th of November, she'll be good.
Knees meet, 9th of November.
There you are.
So, not sure if I'm going to be able to make that one.
Oh.
I know, but partly because of Irish Vape Fest on the 16th.
I shall be at both.
And, my weekends are relatively precious. So, and much as I would like to come to the knees, I've got to pick one or the other, and I've kind of already committed to the Irish one.
It's the Guinness.
It's the Guinness, and it's just the crack.
There'll be plenty of that. Yeah, it'll all be good. All be good. Both will be good. I'll be at both. So nobody will go to either now. You watch.
Oh no, that's it. We've scared them off now. Right, so that's it. We're at the end. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. Apologies for the little wobble there with the technology in the middle, but thank you for joining us again. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'd say a huge thank you to Dave for coming along again. And I'll be back same time, same place next week. Take care, and thanks for watching.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.